I didn't know what to expect out of this show. I had no idea what I was going to be getting into when the time came for me to sit down and watch this show. I was already very well aware of its controversial reputation. I was already well aware of its very divisive nature. This is one of those you either love it or you hate it kind of shows. I've seen a lot of people say that they love this show, but I've also seen just as many people say that they hate this show. And honestly, I have no idea if there's more love for this show than hate, or if there's more hate for this show than love. It seems like it's just a perfect 50-50 between the two. I initially thought that it probably wasn't going to be Search for the Worst Cartoon worthy. Even if I didn't like it, it probably wasn't going to be worthy of the Search for the Worst Cartoon. But I knew that if I didn't make it a Search for the Worst Cartoon, if I made a video on Hazbin Hotel and it wasn't related to the Search for the Worst Cartoon, that would be a huge missed opportunity. So alas, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna make a Search for the Worst Cartoon for Hazbin Hotel. I've heard a lot of things about this show, good things, bad things. I was aware of its controversial reputation. I was ready to see what the big deal was with this show. I was ready to see what the hoopla was all about with this thing. What I did not expect was for this show to somehow be even worse than I expected it to be. I ain't gonna sugarcoat anything. I'm just gonna say my true, honest thoughts on Hazbin Hotel. Hazbin Hotel is one of the worst cartoons I have ever seen in my entire life. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't an overreaction. I'm not saying this to make people mad. I am being f***ing serious. But it goes much further on than that. When the time came for me to sit down and watch this show, I made a mental note to myself that even if I didn't like this show, even if for whatever reason I thought the show was bad, at least I would be able to see the appeal for it. At least I would be able to understand why people like this show. I am unable to do that. I don't know how anyone could like this show. I don't know how anyone could find this show good. I don't know how anyone could find this show funny. I don't know how anyone could find this show entertaining. It's just a joyless mess of a show. It's so ironic to me that, like, the people that say adult animation is bad are the same people that say, like, this is a great show and whatever. As if this isn't part of the problem. As if this won't escalate into a much bigger problem for adult animation in the nearby future. Maybe deep inside there is a good cartoon hiding, but the execution for this show is so bad. It is so poor. This is 100% without a doubt Search for the Worst Cartoon worthy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I have zero shame in putting this show alongside Alan Gregory, The Prince, Velma, Our Cartoon President, The Red Ape Family, all those other shows. I have no shame at all. I have zero shame in putting this show alongside The Slim Shady Show and Fairview. Do you realize how f***ing harsh that is for me to say? Do you realize how harsh it is for me to say that a piece of work is on the same level as The Slim Shady Show and Fairview? Fairview, one of the worst cartoons ever made. No, you don't understand how harsh it is. But now you will. Oh yeah, I just want to disclose something real quick. Yes, I am aware of series creator VivziePop's other show, Helluva Boss. I was originally going to look at both Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss in this episode. However, because I think this show is garbage, and because Helluva Boss is 17 episodes long at the time of making this, I decided, nah, you know what, I think we'll save Helluva Boss for another time. Right now, let's just focus on Hazbin Hotel. Too much VivziePop cannot be good for a person. Let's just say that right there. At some point in the future, I will cover Helluva Boss. I don't know when. It's not going to be the next immediate episode, but sooner or later, I will talk about Helluva Boss and explain why it's bad, assuming, God forbid, that it is on the same level of quality as Hazbin Hotel. I'm just gonna start this off by saying that the chronological order of these two shows confuses the out of me like you have no idea. Okay, so everything began in October of 2019 when a pilot episode was released for Hazbin Hotel on YouTube. And then 1 month later, in November of 2019, a pilot episode for Helluva Boss would be released onto YouTube. And then in October of 2020, Helluva Boss would go on to become a proper full-fledged cartoon. Meanwhile, Hazbin Hotel wouldn't go on to become a proper cartoon until January of 2024, nearly 5 years later, nearly half a decade later. Why did it take so long for Hazbin Hotel to become a proper cartoon when compared to Helluva Boss? I have no idea, nor do I really care all that much. I don't know if it's like a High Guardian Spice situation where the show went through development hell. I have heard allegations that there are very harsh working conditions behind the scenes of both shows. Animators are overworked and underpaid, so that could be something. I mean, they're just allegations, so we don't know if they're true or they're not true, but I figured I might as well just bring them up here just in case. Better safe than sorry. In addition to watching the main 8 episodes of the final show, I also decided to watch the 2019 pilot, which is something that I'm glad I did, because if you watch the final show without watching the pilot episode, you're not going to be able to understand what the hell's going on as well. You are expected to know about the YouTube pilot going into this show, and granted, a lot of people have seen the YouTube pilot, 100 million people, Jesus Christ, man, but still, there are a lot of people out there, I want to imagine, that just randomly stumbled upon this show on Amazon Prime and decided to watch it, not knowing about the 2019 pilot, and as a result of that, they're going to be super confused as to what the is going on. They're going to be confused as to what this show is about. Nothing is going to make sense to them. So the show follows Charlie Morningstar, the princess of hell, as she opens up a hotel for demons, believing that anyone can be redeemed, anyone can be given a second chance, even demons. She opens up the hotel for demons to be redeemed, and allowing them to join heaven and leave hell behind. It's worth noting that there is a yearly extermination that the angels in heaven do to the demons in hell. Every year, the angels fly down to hell to eradicate various demons. And so Charlie tries to convince both heaven and hell that the hotel could be used as an alternative to the exterminations. Joining Charlie is her girlfriend, Maggie, who I am intentionally saying her name wrong for a reason. You see, her name is not Maggie. It's not spelled with an M, it's spelled with a V. Now, I cannot say her real name because it sounds just a little too close to a certain homophobic slur. Every time this character's name is said by Charlie or any of the other characters of the show, it sounds way too much like the F slur. I don't know why they decided to go with this name for this character. Every time Maggie's real name is said, I just hear an F. I don't hear a V at all. And it just confuses me how these people behind the scenes of this show, they listen to all the different takes from the voice actors and actresses. They listen to these characters say Maggie's real name. And somehow, just somehow, nobody in the production crew thought that this sounded a little too close to the homophobic F slur. Okay then, sure. Whatever floats your boat, I guess. I'm only bringing up Charlie because she's the main character, and I'm bringing up Maggie because her real name sounds like a completely different and very unfortunate word. But the rest of the main characters of the show, I could not be bothered to talk about them. And that's simply because there are too many characters in this show. There's at least like 10, 11 main characters in this show. It's just very cluttered. Talking about each and every single one of these characters would just be a chore to do, so I'm not even gonna bother. They all just kind of blend together with their flaws. Whatever you could say about one character, you could very easily say it about another character, and so on. Not helping the fact is that sometimes there are characters that just look extremely similar. Objectively speaking, from a visual standpoint, this is one of the better cartoons that I've covered on the Search for the Worst cartoon. I don't think the art style is ugly or bad or anything like that. However, there's just something about it that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think it's just the fact that every character kind of looks the same. It's like a very weird thing where every character is clearly different and unique with their designs, and yet at the same time they all just kind of blend together despite that. I'm pretty sure it just comes from the same face syndrome that most of the characters of the show suffer from. Almost every character on this show makes this eating grin at least once. For a large majority of the characters, it's just copy and paste, cookie cutter this eating grin expression. Upon closer examination of the character designs, I've noticed that in general they just have very similar facial structures. A lot of the characters on the show just have these pointy chins, and the moment I noticed it, I cannot unnotice it. I was wondering, watching this, why the character designs looked so off to me. Why did they feel so derivative of each other? And that's the reason why. A lot of these characters, they just have the same facial structure. They make the same expression. There's almost no variety, really, in the expressions from the characters. The very limited color scheme doesn't help things out either when it comes to why I'm not a big fan of the show's art style. Listen, I understand that this show takes place in hell. I get that. But would it really hurt VivziePop to add in other colors in this show besides red, white, and black? All of the main characters have this color scheme. Just red, white, and black, and that's it. There's no blue, there's no green, there's no nothing like that. And that's not a good thing. If you give every character the exact same color scheme, that's not gonna make them stand out. Every character is just gonna blend in together. It's gonna be hard to distinguish one character from another. They're all just gonna sort of blend in, basically. There's not gonna be any unique standout character at all. You know that whole thing where it's like, if you can identify a cartoon character just from their silhouette alone, then that's an example of good character design or something along those lines? Yeah, that same thing applies to colors. I could just flash a few colors on screen right now, and I guarantee you everyone watching this video will be able to easily identify which cartoon character is being represented by the three colors. Colors are important for a character design. It helps you memorize which character is which, especially if they have a wide variety of colors. SpongeBob is yellow, Patrick is pink, Mr. Krabs is red, that sort of thing. Now imagine if every character in SpongeBob had the exact same color scheme as SpongeBob himself, yellow, brown, and white, and that's it. Yeah, all of a sudden, the characters aren't going to be as memorable. They're not going to stand out as much. It's going to be a lot harder to distinguish one character from another because of this. That is the problem with Hazbin Hotel. These characters don't need to have the exact same color scheme. It's okay to give them different colors. You could make this character blue. You could make this character green. That sort of thing. You could make this character purple. It's fine. Just because this show takes place in hell doesn't mean that everything has to be red, red, red. Red Dead Redemption. Whole lot of red. Like, that's not necessary at all. Now, I know someone could argue that something like The Simpsons, for example, almost every character on The Simpsons is yellow. And yeah, that is true. Nearly every Simpsons character is yellow. But here's the thing. They each have defining traits attached to them. They all have different color schemes that you could be able to identify. Going back to what I was saying with the whole you can identify a character just from their color scheme stuff, that applies to The Simpsons. Yes, The Simpsons are all yellow, but they also have other colors aside from yellow attached to them. I could easily show you a bunch of these pictures flashing on screen, and you could just look at them and you'll be like, yeah, that's Homer. Yeah, that's Marge. That's Bart. That's Lisa. That's Maggie. That sort of thing. Just because yellow is the main color associated with The Simpsons doesn't mean that it's the only color. There are still a variety of colors attached to The Simpsons, and that's what helps make their designs memorable. Imagine if every character on The Simpsons had the exact same color scheme as Homer. Yellow, white, and blue, and that's it. All of a sudden, none of the characters will feel unique or as memorable. It'll be a lot harder to distinguish one character from the other. And again, that's the problem with Hazbin Hotel. There's also the fact as well that the character designs in The Simpsons are very simplistic, whereas the character designs in Hazbin Hotel are very cluttered with unnecessary details. I really do think that VivziePop could learn a thing or two about how sometimes less is more when it comes to character designs, because adding in all of these excessive details just makes the characters feel even less memorable than they already are. Maybe the excessive details are meant to cover up the fact that, in a way, every character just looks the same. Unfortunately though, between the limited color palette and the same face syndrome that a lot of the characters suffer from, that ends up not being the case at all. I am just simply unable to memorize these characters because of the flaws in their design. And this show has a lot of main characters in it, so that just makes it even worse. Usually, whenever I look at a cartoon on this series that has like an ugly art style or whatever, I briefly bring up that like, oh yeah, it's ugly and whatever, but like I don't really go into excessive detail because most of the time it just kind of speaks for itself. You look at something like The Prince and it's super obvious as to why The Prince is ugly. You just have to look at it and that's it. It speaks for itself. There's no reason for me to elaborate on why it looks ugly. Doing that would be redundant. With this, though, I felt it was necessary for me to go into detail about why I thought the art style for this show was off to me. I knew going into this show that there was just something about the art style that was just off to me, but I didn't know what it was until I more closely examined the art style of the show. I can only hope that all of the issues that I have with Hazbin Hotel's art style aren't present in Helluva Boss, but I sadly very much doubt that. And with all of that said, I think it is time for us to move on to the main issue that I have with Hazbin Hotel. Now, if you're someone that has this magical thing called good taste and you think that this show is garbage, then there's a strong chance that you will know exactly what I'm talking about. We're going to be talking about the elephant in the room, if you will, for Hazbin Hotel. I saw a ton of memes being made about this, but I had no idea that in reality, this was exactly how the show was like. Let's talk about the humor, shall we? There is no humor in Hazbin Hotel. There are no jokes in Hazbin Hotel. There is no attempt to be funny in Hazbin Hotel. There isn't a single funny joke in Hazbin Hotel. There is not a single joke in Hazbin Hotel that I would consider worthy of being laughed at. I was just completely expressionless watching this show. Not once did I laugh, not once did I chuckle, not even a grin, a smile, nothing like that. Anything to give a vague hint that I found a joke mildly humorous and entertaining. No, nothing at all. Nothing like that at all. This show believes that swearing over and over and over and over and over again is funny. This show thinks that excessive swearing is comedy gold. All 9 episodes of the show suffer from this. They just think swearing is funny, and that's it. Saying the F word a million times is funny. It's just pointlessly edgy for the sake of being pointlessly edgy. There's no reason for it at all. I guess it's meant to be funny and shocking, and it ends up being neither of those things. I would see tons of memes being made about, like, if SpongeBob was made by VivziePop or something like that, where it would just be constant swearing pointlessly shoehorned in. And I thought those were just, they're memes, obviously. I thought those were just jokes, overreactions, stuff like that. Hyperbole, basically. I had no idea that the humor of this show was actually like that. Just constant swearing and nothing else. Wikipedia lists this show as a musical, a black comedy, and a comedy drama. There are songs in the show, 2 songs per episode actually, so yeah, okay, it is a musical, I'll give you that. I'll go into detail about the songs later into the video. This is not a black comedy. A black comedy is something that has a darker style of humor. Usually, a black comedy takes a serious, disturbing subject matter and plays it out for laughs. It turns it into something a little more lighthearted, something to laugh at. This show doesn't do anything like that at all. The black comedy that this show has in question is just excessive swearing from all of the characters, and that's it. And not once is it ever funny. The main villain of this show, I guess you could say, is Adam. Yes, as in Adam and Eve from, the Christian lore and whatnot. He's only in 3 episodes of the show, but in all of his appearances, he's just nonstop swearing, just saying the F word, the B word, everything, over and over again. It's not funny. I don't know how anyone could find this funny. It's so devoid of humor. I genuinely question how this show has fans. Like, there is no way someone will actually sit down and think this is comedy gold. When I first sat down and watched the 2019 pilot, I made a note of the excessive swearing and how that seemed to be the only sort of joke included in the pilot. I am flabbergasted by the fact that somehow this has carried on to the final show, to the final product. I would be willing to somewhat forgive the pilot episode having this excessive swearing equals funny nonsense, but in the final show, it's just unacceptable. I mean, think about it. This came out nearly half a decade after the original 2019 pilot. The 2019 YouTube pilot was a small indie amateur short, and that's it. The final cartoon is a lot more professionally made. It has a bigger team behind it. It's on a major streaming service to watch. And yet, it still has the same bad writing, the same awful, unfunny humor that the original 2019 pilot had. Somehow, during the development of this show, between October of 2019 and January of 2024, VivziePop's style of humor for this show would never change, never improve, nothing. You look at the animation for the pilot and you compare it to the final show, and yeah, there is an improvement, obviously. I think some of the voice actors are different, but I don't know. But the writing and the style of humor are exactly the same as they were. Somehow, in this time span, VivziePop never moved on from the whole excessive swearing equals comedy gold nonsense. That somehow stuck around. I want to imagine there were a lot of changes made, a lot of revisions made to the show during its development, and yet somehow that rule that VivziePop held on to, that belief that excessive swearing is funny, it never went away. It never changed. And yet, even more baffling than that is the fact that there are people out there that don't have a problem with this. I mean, yes, there are people out there that think this show is bad. There are people out there that have a problem with the excessive swearing. That's one of the main criticisms that people have for this show. But there are still people out there that enjoy this show and find it funny despite that. And I cannot fathom how or why anyone would find this funny. There are literally no other jokes in this show. The excessive swearing is all that you're gonna get when it comes to the humor for this show. There are no other attempts at comedy except, oh, the characters say the F word a billion times, and that's funny and hilarious and comedy gold. I feel bad for anyone that considers this their favorite cartoon. I really do. I cannot imagine looking at this and thinking this is your favorite cartoon. You love this show. I guarantee you that same person that considers this their favorite cartoon, they probably look at shows like Big Mouth or Velma and they think they're garbage. The irony is stunning. It really is. The world of animation is so massive. There are tons of different cartoons and anime out there, and you want to go with this as your favorite one. There are so many incredible cartoons out there, and this is what you want to consider your favorite cartoon. This. Modern Family Guy for people that hate Modern Family Guy. Seriously. This is no different or better than a lot of the bad adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. There is nothing that makes this show better than Velma, and yet somehow it is nowhere near as despised as Velma. I'm sorry, I know I'm gonna get a lot of backlash for saying this, but I don't care. Why should I consider this good, but then I should consider Velma bad? Like, what's the difference, honestly? How are the two shows different? How is this good, but then Velma is bad? I'm being serious. I'm not asking this to piss people off. I'm asking this because I genuinely want to know. Is it because, oh, Hazbin Hotel is an original story, while Velma is based on an existing cartoon? Like, I don't get it. It's so stupid. I would seriously, genuinely love it if someone in the comments could provide me with a detailed, lengthy explanation on how Hazbin Hotel is good, but Velma is bad. Why am I supposed to like Hazbin Hotel but hate Velma? You can't say Velma is garbage and one of the worst cartoons ever made and everything wrong with adult animation and whatever, and then say that Hazbin Hotel is good. Because everything you could say about Velma, you could very easily apply it to Hazbin Hotel. I know there's gonna be comments saying like, oh no, you're wrong, Velma is unfunny garbage. Yeah, and Hazbin Hotel is funny. Characters swearing a million times. Yeah, that's some real good comedy right there. The VivziePop is a comedy genius, isn't she? That's real good humor right there. It's also worth noting that even though this is a comedy, or at least it's supposed to be a comedy, there are serious themes in this show. There are serious elements in it. The problem, though, is that it is very hard for me to take these themes seriously. As I said before, Wikipedia considers this show a comedy drama. It is a very poorly executed comedy drama. A comedy drama is meant to be a blend of comedy and drama, hence the name. This show, on the other hand, fails at doing that. Whenever there's a serious moment in the show, it just clashes with the unfunny humor. There's an episode of the show, a rather infamous, controversial episode, focusing on one of the main characters, Angel Dust, who is a star of, let's just say, Korn, the nu metal band. So there's a scene where Angel Dust is trying to film a movie, but then Charlie intervenes, which causes the director of the movie to get angry at both of them. It's then revealed that Angel Dust is in an abusive relationship with the director, and I'm supposed to take this seriously. This is undeniably heavy subject matter, but I'm unable to take it seriously. You know why? Because the comedy clashes with it. The really bad comedy. I don't know how they expected me to take a show like this seriously. If you have to rely on excessive swearing as your only source of humor, then no, I'm not gonna take your dramatic moments seriously. Plain and simple. A comedy drama can only work if both the comedy and the drama are good. If one aspect is bad, then by default that makes the other aspect bad as well. This show has moments in it that I'm supposed to take seriously, but because it has the humor of a 14-year-old middle schooler, there's no chance in hell that I'll ever be able to take this stuff seriously. It just creates a complete clash with the tone. The show could just be dropping a million F-bombs expecting me to find it funny, and then randomly they'll be like, oh hey, here's an emotional moment that you're supposed to take seriously. I kid you not, there's a scene in the final episode of the show where one of the characters makes an unfunny sporting goods joke, let's just put it that way, and then it's immediately followed up with Charlie crying to Maggie over the possibility of them not winning the war against the Angels, to which a song starts where Maggie tells Charlie that they'll always be together no matter what, or some crap like that. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's meant to be a sweet, emotional moment, very cute. I don't feel it though. I don't feel that emotional. I don't feel emotional or anything like that watching it, because just a few seconds ago there was a really unfunny sporting goods joke that was made, and that completely ruined the mood that the show is trying to settle in. This sort of tonal shift is the exact thing that the MCU is criticized for nowadays, yet for some reason I guess it's perfectly fine when Hazbin Hotel does it. I don't know why. Oh yeah, you might be wondering, what am I talking about with the whole war against the Angels stuff? Well, you see, in the penultimate episode of the show, Charlie tries and fails to convince the Angels that her hotel could be used as a place for demons to get redeemed. And as a result of her failing to convince the Angels, they decide to start the extermination the next day, much sooner. Charlie and the others prepare to go into war against the Angels. The final episode of the show largely consists of the battle between the Angels and the demons. What I don't understand is, regardless of who wins, the demons win, spoiler alert, if anyone actually cares, but like regardless of who won, if the Angels won or the demons win or whatever, wouldn't that basically just destroy what Charlie had set out to do initially? What she wanted was for demons to redeem themselves and join heaven, and I don't think going into war with the Angels is gonna do anything about that. I don't think the Angels are going to look at this war and think, okay, you know what, maybe Charlie, we can allow her to do her hotel redemption crap and allow these demons to become angels and let them join heaven. They would be less willing to allow these demons to enter heaven because of this war. Early into the final episode, I thought they were going to do some stupid thing where it's like the angels and demons will make peace with each other or whatever. But no, that doesn't happen at all. I mentioned before, I guess you could say main antagonist of the show, Adam. Yeah, they defeat him in the battle. Just like that. And, yeah, I'm not sure if the angels would still be willing to allow these demons to redeem themselves and go to heaven. At the end of the war against the angels, the hotel gets destroyed. However, there's like a scene at the end, a musical number, where they're rebuilding the hotel to be better than it was before. And it's like, girl, what the hell is the point of doing this whole redemption demon nonsense? You just basically destroyed any chances of that happening by fighting against the angels. It's such bad writing, seriously. And then there's a post-credits scene where one of the angels tries to get in touch with Charlie's mom, Lilith, obviously setting up a season 2 that will unfortunately happen. I've heard stuff that like this show was really successful for Amazon Prime. I think this was like the biggest debut for an animated show on Amazon Prime. So unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, we are getting a season 2 of this. We're getting more of this garbage in the future, and we're just perfectly fine with it. Velma getting a season 2? No, that's bad and horrible. Boo. This getting a season 2? Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of VivziePop. I'm so happy for her. Congratulations. I don't get it. I really don't get it at all. I think a big reason as to why I hate this show is because of the fact that so many other people like it somehow. Now I get that people have opinions and whatnot, but like, I just don't get how anyone can find this show enjoyable, especially when compared to other adult cartoons that get a lot more hate. It just doesn't sit right with me. The fact that last year a bunch of people were hating on Velma, claiming that it represented everything wrong with adult animation and whatever, and then the very next year, those same people are now praising this show of equal quality, calling it what adult animation needs right now, the future of adult animation, stuff like that. And let me tell you something. If this is what the future of adult animation looks like, then you know what? I think I'll stick with the unfunny Family Guy clones, thank you very much. Those are easily the lesser of the two evils. I look at Hazbin Hotel and I compare it to a lot of the bad adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series, and it's like, I don't see how it's different. I went into this show thinking it was going to be different from a lot of the other bad adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. Either in the sense that it's actually a good show and not Search for the Worst Cartoon worthy, or it's a bad show and I don't like it and I consider it Search for the Worst Cartoon worthy, but it's different. It's unique from all the other bad cartoons I've looked at, all the other bad adult cartoons that I've looked at. That is not the case at all. There is nothing that makes this show any better or different from The Prince or Velma or anything like that. And yet somehow people think this is good. Somehow this isn't unanimously hated like Velma is. Obviously there are people out there that think this show is bad, but the overall backlash that it has received is very minuscule when compared to Velma's backlash, and I just don't understand why that's the case. At least Velma tries vaguely to be funny. It doesn't work out well, but at least there's an attempt beyond just swearing a million times. I hate this show more than Velma. I don't even care if that's a controversial thing. I mean, both are trash, so it's probably not that controversial, but I just don't understand how people will say, like, Velma is bad, and then they'll say this is good. Like, what's the difference, really? What is the difference? I'm willing to bet that if the infamous adults who still watch cartoons joke from Velma was in Hazbin Hotel, people will be eating it up and calling it funny. And by the way, I just want to say, they put this joke into the show to intentionally piss people off, and they succeeded. Y'all took the bait. I am not defending this joke. I'm not saying it's funny or anything like that, but it's so obvious that they only included this because they knew it would piss people off. It would make them angry. And unfortunately, it succeeded because people got mad at this joke. Y'all took the bait just like that. Y'all inadvertently proved their point in a way. I hope you realize that. I could just very easily see it. You slap this joke onto Hazbin Hotel, you add in a million unnecessary swear words for extra measure, and then boom, you're gonna have a bunch of people saying like, oh my gosh, this is so funny, VivziePop is a fucking comedic genius and whatever. I love how throughout this whole video, I never once went into detail about like the allegations of VivziePop being a terrible person, and truth be told, that's not even like scratching the surface. That's just the cherry on top is what it is. Even if all of these allegations and whatever, that like the working conditions behind her shows are really harsh and whatnot, even if that was false, I would still consider this garbage. This is not a separate the art from the artist situation. Separating the art from the artist is not possible if the art is garbage, regardless of whether the artist is garbage as well or not. VivziePop could be the greatest goddamn human being alive on planet Earth, and I would still consider Hazbin Hotel to be dog shit. Plain and simple. I'm not hating on this because popular thing bad. I'm hating on this because it's just such an unfunny, humorless thing. The humor in this show is practically non-existent, and the serious moments that are in this show I'm unable to take seriously because of how awful the humor is. I hate the fact that this will inevitably be an influential show for adult animation. I hate the fact that years on from now, people will be putting this show alongside The Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, King of the Hill, Rick and Morty, BoJack Horseman, that sort of thing. I hate that fact. I don't care if this is an indie cartoon. That doesn't mean anything to me. Just because it's indie doesn't automatically mean it's good. Sometimes indie animation can be crap as well. I went into this show thinking that it'll be good, or at least not as bad as its haters made it out to be. As it turns out though, it is oh so much worse than the haters made it out to be. As someone that has sat through countless terrible adult cartoons, I can 100% verify that Hazbin Hotel is no better or different from most of the adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. There are a couple positive things that I'll say about the show, I guess. I don't really like the art style all that much for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. However, I will say that it is objectively good, especially for Search for the Worst cartoon standards. This is one of the better cartoons visually. The songs are okay, I guess. I thought I would hate them a lot more, but I ended up not really hating them. I hated them initially, but eventually I just kind of grew numb to them. Objectively speaking, there's nothing really wrong with them. They're not poorly composed, they're not poorly sung. There's a few instances where you have pointless swear words shoehorned into the lyrics, but aside from that, I'm not sure if I want to call these songs poorly written. And just an FYI, the last thing that I want to do with my life right now is carefully analyze the lyrics for every Hazbin Hotel song to see if they actually have genuinely bad writing in them or not. So for the writing, we'll just leave it at a couple songs have unnecessary swearing in them, and that's it. I thought I would hate the songs a lot more, considering the fact that with a very few exceptions, I don't really like musicals all that much, but I guess the songs are just whatever. I would never listen to them. I would never consider them good songs, really. Songs that I would ever listen to. I guess there are a couple songs that are vaguely catchy, but that's about it, really. And finally, I never thought I would ever say this, but I genuinely, unironically find the Verbalace memes surrounding this show to be much funnier than the actual show itself. If I sat down and I watched the original animation of Verbalace and Charlie, I would unironically find it funnier. I would get more entertainment out of that than I would the actual Hazbin Hotel. The fact that this stupid video is one of the only good things to come out of this godforsaken show, no pun intended, should just really tell you something, honestly. I don't like Hazbin Hotel. I think it is one of the worst cartoons I've ever seen. I hate this more than a lot of the other cartoons that I've covered on the Search for the Worst cartoon, on the basis that I'm supposed to consider this good. A lot of the cartoons that I cover on the Search for the Worst cartoon are either unanimously agreed to be terrible, or they're extremely obscure and not a lot of people know about them, but the few people that know about them think that they're terrible, and if more people were aware of their existence, then yeah, for sure they would think it's terrible. I'm supposed to consider this good, though. I'm supposed to like this. This has a huge, dedicated fan base somehow. There will be people trying to defend this show. There will be people trying to claim that I am wrong and that this show is actually good, which is something that will never happen with any of the other cartoons that I've looked at on the search for the worst cartoon. Nobody's gonna try and convince me that our cartoon president is actually a good show or anything like that. Nobody's gonna go and comment, actually, the Slim Shady show is a work of art. You're just a hater, seriously. And yet I know for a fact that that exact thing is gonna happen with Hazbin Hotel. And I'm sorry. I really, truly am sorry. But I hate this show. It is one of the worst cartoons I have ever seen. And I just cannot understand why people like this show. I just cannot see the appeal for it at all. Maybe if I hadn't looked at that many bad adult cartoons prior to this, then yeah, this would probably be a different story. But speaking as someone that has seen so much garbage, I can very safely say that Hazbin Hotel fits in with that garbage. And I have zero shame in saying that, regardless of how controversial that statement may be. I now dread the day that I have to look at Helluva Boss and just witness more of the same crap. I don't even know if I'll ever make a Helluva Boss video, because there's a very strong chance that everything that I've criticized Hazbin Hotel for, it'll likely apply to Helluva Boss as well. I don't think there's going to be like any unique, original, standout reason for why Helluva Boss is bad when compared to Hazbin Hotel. I don't know, really. Helluva Boss could be better than Hazbin Hotel, it could be worse, it could be on the same level, only time will tell, really. Right now, though, I need a long break from anything VivziePop related. I don't ever want to touch her work again for a very, very, very long time. Thank you very much. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios. Well guys, this was going to happen at some point, and now it's time for it to finally happen. A few months ago, I decided to look at a little cartoon that had come out at the beginning of this year called Hazbin Hotel. You've probably never heard of this show. It's very obscure. Only like 2 people know about it, really. I had heard a lot of things about this show. It was very divisive. People either loved it or they hated it. I decided to watch it and make a video on it, and my thoughts on the show were less than stellar, to say the least. I was very much aware of series creator VivziePop's other cartoon, Helluva Boss, and originally I was going to do a double feature of sorts, where I would look at both Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss in one video, but because I thought Hazbin Hotel was that bad, I figured it would only make sense to split the two up into 2 separate videos. As time went on, I was dreading but also weirdly anticipating the day that I would watch Helluva Boss and start work on a video talking about it. I didn't know what I was expecting out of Helluva Boss when I first watched it. Was it going to be better than Hazbin Hotel? Was it going to be worse? Was it going to be equally as bad? I didn't know. It could have gone in any way. So recently I decided to watch most of Helluva Boss. I didn't watch every single episode, and I'm probably not going to watch every episode, but I watched most of the show, and that's all that matters. And I'll be damned, maybe VivziePop isn't as talentless as I initially made her out to be. I would like to start this off by saying that Helluva Boss is far from a good show. By no means am I saying that this is a good show, but to my surprise, this is nowhere near as bad as Hazbin Hotel was. So the show is meant to be a spin-off of Hazbin Hotel. I'm not sure if I I can really call it a spin-off, because I brought this up in the Hazbin Hotel episode, and I'm gonna bring it up again here. The chronological order for both of these shows is kind of confusing. Hazbin Hotel started off as a short pilot that was uploaded to YouTube in October of 2019, and then 1 month later, in November of 2019, the pilot for Helluva Boss would come out. And then in October of 2020, the first proper episode of Helluva Boss would be released. However, the first proper episode of Hazbin Hotel would not come out until January of this year. So in other words, Helluva Boss came out before Hazbin Hotel, but it also came out after Hazbin Hotel. I don't know, it's extremely confusing. For the sake of making things easier, I'm just gonna say that this show came out before Hazbin Hotel, completely ignoring the 2019 pilots. The premise of this show is admittedly more interesting to me when compared to Hazbin Hotel's premise. The show follows a team of 4 characters, 3 of them demons, 1 of them a wolf. They run an assassination business. Those that are in hell hire these 4 to go up into the living world and assassinate someone for revenge. There's a lot of other details in the plot, but that's basically the gist of it. Again, I think it's a lot more interesting than Hazbin Hotel's premise. To be honest, thinking about it more, Hazbin Hotel doesn't even have a bad idea behind it. Maybe it could have been a good show, but by God, the execution of it is unbelievably poor. Helluva Boss, in comparison, I don't think it's good, but it's not as bad, surprisingly. A lot of the problems that I had with Hazbin Hotel, they're either present in Helluva Boss, but to a lesser extent, or they are completely improved in this show. Well, I don't know if I want to say improved, because again, this show technically came out before Hazbin Hotel, but still. For starters, you have the art style of the show, which I think is actually really good. The art style of Hazbin Hotel isn't bad either, but I do have my problems with it, and these problems are, for the most part, absent in Helluva Boss. For one thing, Helluva Boss has a more varied color scheme when compared to Hazbin Hotel. In Hazbin Hotel, almost every character has the exact same color scheme: red, white, and black, and that's it. It makes it really hard to tell the characters apart from each other. They all just end up being one big, giant, indistinguishable blob of red, white, and black. 3 of the 4 main characters in Helluva Boss do have the red, white, and black color scheme, but besides that, there's generally a lot more variety in the colors for the character designs. Additionally, when talking about the character designs in Hazbin Hotel, I brought up how every character kind of looks the same. A large majority of the characters have very similar facial structure and very similar expressions. Pointy chins with eating grins. Helluva Boss, in comparison, again has more variety with its character designs. Yes, there are some characters that have the pointy chin and the eating grin, but not as much as in Hazbin Hotel. Going back to what I was saying with the color schemes, the backgrounds in Hazbin Hotel suffered the same problem. They're all just mostly red, and that's it. I understand that this show takes place in hell, but that doesn't mean that it has to be red all around. It's okay to have other colors. If you have everything be red all around, it's not going to look visually appealing. Nothing is going to stand out at all. Everything is going to look exactly the same. The weirdest thing is, even though Helluva Boss takes place in hell as well, that rhymed, I know, there are different colors. Like, there are a variety of colors. You know, you have purple, you have green, you have stuff like that. And it's proof that, like, you can have the show take place in hell, but also give hell other colors besides the obvious red. And then there are frequent moments where the characters go into the living streaming world, and it's like, oh my god, it feels so refreshing to see all these different colors. It might seem like I'm making a big deal out of something so minor, but let me tell you something. When you have an extremely limited color palette in your cartoon, that will affect it. That will make everything look and feel the same. It doesn't matter how unique the personalities of these characters are, they all have the same color scheme, and so it's going to be hard to distinguish them from each other. It's okay to give these characters other colors besides red, white, and black. Even if this show takes place in hell, it's okay to give the backgrounds and locations other colors besides red. The fact that this YouTube cartoon that has a significantly smaller team behind it has a better art style than this much bigger cartoon that's on a major streaming service is just crazy to me. Like, how the is that possible? Seriously, how do you do that? Moving on from that, I think it's time we look at the one big flaw that completely ruined Hazbin Hotel for me, and we'll see if Helluva Boss has it as well. Hazbin Hotel is generally considered a comedy, even though it's not funny. There are no jokes at all. None. Zero jokes in Hazbin Hotel. It's not funny in the slightest, and yet it's classified as a comedy for some reason. You see, serious creator VivziePop has a, how do I put it, very immature style of humor. The only jokes that could be found in Hazbin Hotel is excessive swearing. That is literally it. The characters say the F word a lot. The characters say the B word a lot. And it's meant to be funny. And not once is it ever funny. The problem is not that there's swearing in this show. The problem is that there is too much swearing in this show. And that it's the only source of humor in the entire thing. There's literally no other attempts at comedy in Hazbin Hotel besides the characters say a lot, the characters say bitch a lot, that sort of thing. It is the most unfunny thing I have ever seen in my entire life, and somehow people just eat it up. Somehow people are okay with it. There are people that will look at like Velma or Modern Family Guy or whatever, and they think, yeah, this is garbage, this is unfunny, but then Hazbin Hotel they'll consider comedy gold. Velma and Hazbin Hotel are equally unfunny. There ain't a single funny joke in either of these shows, and yet one is unanimously despised while the other isn't. I don't get it. Well, when it comes to Helluva Boss, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that the excessive swearing is nowhere near as prominent in Helluva Boss as it was in Hazbin Hotel. The bad news is that it's still present in the show, and that it's still not funny, even if it's not as prominent as it was in Hazbin Hotel, and that the show in general is just not funny, even if you looked past the excessive swearing. Okay, I will admit something. There is one moment across both of these shows where the swearing is actually kind of funny. One of the characters on this show has the same voice actor as Billy from Billy and Mandy and Invader Zim, and it's like impossible to listen to this character talk without thinking of Zim. And so there's one scene where this character yells out mother effer, and it actually made me laugh a little bit. I guess it's just the idea of like Invader Zim swearing is funny to me, and that's it. That's the only time the swearing is funny in either of these shows. You know what, the fact that I was able to laugh one time in this show automatically puts it leagues above Hazbin Hotel. Hazbin Hotel was a f***ing desert wasteland of humor. There were no jokes at all. Helluva Boss at least had one funny moment in it, one funny joke in it, and even then it wasn't really the joke itself that was funny, it wasn't the swear word itself being uttered that was funny, it was just the idea of like another character that the voice actor for this character voiced swearing that made it funny. The idea of Invader Zim swearing just made me laugh a little bit. It wasn't a massively funny moment or anything like that, it wasn't a laugh out loud gut buster, it was just I let out a small chuckle and that's it. But still, the fact that this show had one funny moment in it is enough to put it far above Hazbin Hotel alongside a bunch of other adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. Well done, Helluva Boss. Well done. Have a gold star. In general, though, I don't think the show is very funny, but at least it tries a little bit with its comedy, which is more than I can say for Hazbin Hotel. With Hazbin Hotel, it's like they didn't even try at all with the comedy. It's just unfunny as to sit through. This at least tries a little bit to be funny. This at least tries a little bit to do something, really. They tried to make a good show with this. I guess you could say they tried to make a good show with Hazbin Hotel, but I think the execution for Helluva Boss is much better done. I gotta be honest, I could see this being a good show, much more than I could Hazbin Hotel. I don't hate this show that much. I don't love it either, but surprisingly, I don't think it's downright terrible like Hazbin Hotel was. I think it's extremely mediocre, but given how awful Hazbin Hotel is, I'll take extremely mediocre, thank you very much. Some of you could suggest that I shouldn't compare Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss all that much, and that I should look at Helluva Boss as its own thing separated from Hazbin Hotel. But considering how much I fucking loathe Hazbin Hotel, I will inevitably make comparisons to it with this other show that VivziePop made. If I thought that this show was worse than Hazbin Hotel, I would be making comparisons. As it stands right now, where I think the show is much better than Hazbin Hotel, I'm making comparisons to show why I think this show works a little bit, whereas Hazbin Hotel doesn't work at all. And even though I don't think Helluva Boss is as bad as Hazbin Hotel, I still would not call it a good show at all. The show is still unfunny, even if the excessive swearing isn't as prominent in this show as it was in Hazbin Hotel. Much like Hazbin Hotel, Helluva Boss is not 100% a full-on comedy. There are serious, dramatic moments in the show. The good thing is, though, because the humor in Helluva Boss is slightly less bad than in Hazbin Hotel, and by that I mean there's not as much excessive swearing in this show, that means I'm able to take these dramatic emotional moments just a little bit more seriously. This was a huge problem that I had with Hazbin Hotel. 99% of the show is just extremely unfunny comedy. The characters swear a million times, and I'm supposed to find that funny. And then randomly, out of nowhere, they're like, oh hey, here's a moment that's supposed to be serious. It's supposed to be an emotional moment. Please take this seriously. And I just get tonal whiplash from it, just because, like, it comes out of nowhere. It's so unexpected. There is nothing wrong with blending comedy and drama together. That is perfectly fine. The problem is that the show does an extremely awkward job at doing so, in part because of how bad its comedy is. I brought up in the episode for Hazbin Hotel, but a comedy drama can only work if both the comedy and the drama are good. If one aspect is bad, then by default the other aspect is bad as well, regardless of how it's executed. The poor execution of one aspect completely spoils the good execution of another aspect. There's been a lot of discourse around the show surrounding the abusive relationship between Angel Dust and Valentino. Yes, I actually bothered to remember the characters' names for this, and I hate myself for that. I've seen people say that this show handles this undeniably serious subject matter with the care and delicacy that it deserves, and I've seen other people say that the show does it in a very poor, disrespectful manner. But the thing is, for me personally, I'm not able to take this seriously, regardless of how it's executed. Yes, abusive relationships are a serious matter. They're not jokes or anything like that, but I'm not able to take it seriously for this show, regardless of if it's well executed or not, because of how fucking terrible the humor is. I see this undeniably serious moment, and it's like, I should take this seriously, but I just can't, because I get reminded that this is the same show that thinks saying the F word and the B word a million times is funny, and that completely ruins any credibility, any chances of me taking this seriously, even though I know I should. I would much rather have a bad adult cartoon just to be a 100% terrible terrible comedy from start to finish, rather than a mostly terrible comedy with a few serious moments sprinkled in. Because then those few serious moments, I'm not going to be able to take them seriously because of how unfunny the show is. Almost every adult cartoon that I've looked at on the search for the worst cartoon has no serious moments or anything like that. There's no emotional, dramatic moments that I'm supposed to take seriously. There's nothing like that in these shows. They're just 100% terrible comedies from start to finish. And to be honest, I would much rather have them be this way, because if these shows attempted to have serious, dramatic moments in them, regardless of how these serious moments are executed, and regardless of the serious subject matters in question, I'm not going to take these moments seriously because of how awful the humor is in these shows. Stuff like Alan Gregory, The Prince, Hoops, none of these shows have serious moments in them at all. They're all just terrible comedies from start to finish, and that's for the better. If any of these three shows attempted to have serious moments in them, I wouldn't be able to take them seriously because of how unfunny they are. All the serious moments would just feel very forced and out of place. It's like they just shoehorned them into the show. And it's like, if I don't find your comedy funny, what makes you think I'm gonna take your drama seriously? This is yet another reason as to why I think Hazbin Hotel is worse than a lot of the bad adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. You can't make an extremely unfunny and immature pee-pee joke and then immediately follow it up with a serious emotional song and expect me to just be okay with it, because I'm not going to be okay with it. You cannot give me this MCU-esque tonal shift and expect me to just be fine with it, for me to just ignore it and move on from it like it's nothing. No, I will notice the abrupt tonal shift, and I will criticize your show for it. And yes, that is actually a thing that happens in Hazbin Hotel. A character makes a really unfunny pee-pee joke, and then it's immediately followed up with a song from Charlie and her girlfriend as they sing about how they'll always be together no matter what. It's supposed to be a cute, sweet, emotional moment, but unfortunately I'm unable to see it that way because of the pee-pee joke that happened only 5 seconds prior to the song. Again, considering the fact that Helluva Boss has slightly less bad humor compared to in Hazbin Hotel, I am able to take these dramatic moments a little bit more seriously, but not by much. The transition going from the comedy to the drama and then back to the comedy still feels extremely awkward. It just doesn't feel like a perfect balance at all. It doesn't just naturally go from comedy to being serious. No, it feels off. It just feels abrupt. I genuinely do believe that both of these shows would have been significantly better if they weren't comedies at all, because it's clear that VivziePop is not good at comedy at all. If these shows were just straight up 100% dramas, then maybe they would have been better. Because again, regardless of how you feel about the dramatic, serious moments in this show, the one thing's for sure, even if you think they're poorly executed, they are nowhere near as poorly executed as the comedy, if you can even call it that. Again, at least they try a little bit with the serious moments. They don't even try at all with the humor. VivziePop is not good at comedy. VivziePop is not funny at all. And that's normal. Sometimes there are just some genres that they're not meant for you. Someone could be good at making action movies, but then they could be bad at making romantic comedies. Someone could be good at making comedies, but then they could be bad at making horror movies. VivziePop is good at making drama. Or at the very least, she's better at doing it than comedy, that's for sure. And I do think that both of these shows would have benefited greatly from not being comedies at all. Because I'm sorry, but saying a billion times is not funny. All that's gonna do is turn me away from whatever serious emotional moments there are in your shows. I'm not gonna take them seriously even though I should. And truth be told, I fail to see how making both of these shows into straight up dramas would be a bad thing. Almost every single adult cartoon is a comedy in some way, shape, or form. There are little to no adult cartoons out there that aren't comedies. movies. Even something like BoJack Horseman is still primarily a comedy, even if it does tackle darker, more serious themes when compared to other adult cartoons. VivziePop could have done something revolutionary with these two shows. She could have shown that you don't need to rely on vulgarity or constant swearing or anything like that in order to convey that the cartoon you're making is for adults and not for kids. Instead, she chooses to do the complete opposite and relies solely on excessive swearing for comedy. It just feels like a desperate way to convey that yes, Hazbin Hotel is not a show for kids, it's a show for adults. Even though there is not a single adult out there, there is not a single grown adult that would look at Hazbin Hotel and find it funny. If a grown adult watches Hazbin Hotel, they're gonna find it unfunny and immature because a lot of the humor is just, oh haha, they say the F word a lot, and that's it. In contrast, some immature 7-year-old could find the show funny because they say the no-no words a lot, and that's funny to them because they're immature. I gotta be honest, it feels like there's a lot less for me to say about Helluva Boss when compared to Hazbin Hotel. Not only is Helluva Boss nowhere near as bad as Hazbin Hotel, but also there's just the realization I have now that like criticizing VivziePop is pointless. Working on this video has made me realize how different of a feeling it is to make a search for the worst cartoon on an ongoing series that's still getting new episodes, compared to a search for the worst cartoon on a short-lived one-season cartoon from over 10 years ago. Because on the rare occasions that I look at an ongoing cartoon on this series, I just think to myself that like, okay, this is getting another season, I can only hope it's better. There's just that 50-50 chance that like season 2 will either be better than season 1 or it will be the same quality as season 1. It will end up being the same crap. And unfortunately, more often than not, these shows end up going the latter route. They end up just being the exact same thing as season 1. And I don't see why Hazbin Hotel will be any different from this, except for the fact that VivziePop is a prominent person online. Velma, for example, is made by a giant corporation, and so as a result of that, anything I say about season 2 of Velma and how it could be better than season 1 and whatever, it's not going to matter to them. They're not going to take it in because they're a corporation. They're not going to listen to this one random individual. Hazbin Hotel, in comparison though, is made by a much smaller team. The creator of the show, VivziePop, is a lot more prominent on the internet, and only now do I realize that it's kind of pointless to criticize her. And what I mean by that is, she's not gonna change. What do you think are the chances that she's gonna come across the 2 videos that I've made on her shows and she's gonna think, oh, you know what, this guy has a point, maybe I'll improve the quality of my shows? That's just not gonna happen at all. I could criticize the excessive swearing in both of these shows all I want, I could go say that they are unfunny a million times, but that's not going to do anything at all. VivziePop is not going to watch these videos, acknowledge my criticism, take note of my criticism, and apply them to any of her future seasons for these shows. VivziePop doesn't know who I am. I don't exist to VivziePop. I'm just one random stranger on the internet who just so happens to not like her work. And no matter how many times I criticize the flaws in her shows, she is not going to take in that criticism. She is going to keep making these shows the way that she's been making them because she has a fan base that doesn't care at all. I don't think there's going to be any Hazbin Hotel or Helluva Boss fan that's going to have their minds changed by watching my 2 videos on these shows. No one is going to watch my Hazbin Hotel episode and think, oh, you know what, I used to love this show, but now I think it's garbage. Nothing like that at all. They're going to continue to like Hazbin Hotel despite the many flaws that it has. And they're going to continue liking Hazbin Hotel whenever we get season 2, season 3, season 4, etc., even though they are most likely going to have the same flaws that season 1 has. It just makes me realize now how redundant it is to criticize VivziePop at this point. She's not going to change the quality of her work, and there's nothing that I or any of us could do about that. VivziePop doesn't care, Her fans don't care. Why should I care, honestly? VivziePop will continue to make these shows the way that she's been making them, and her fans will continue to eat them up. And then it just makes me question, what will people think of these shows in the nearby future? What legacies will these shows have? What will be their future? I strongly believe that both of these shows, especially Hazbin Hotel, will be seen as poorly aged and unfunny in the future. There are, of course, a good amount of people that already hate both of these shows, but as the years go by, there will be more and more people that think, wow, these shows are terrible. And a lot of those people are going to be former fans. I genuinely believe that in the nearby future, both of these shows, especially Hazbin Hotel, will go through what Rick and Morty once went through. Rick and Morty used to be the biggest show in the entire world. Everyone knew Rick and Morty, everyone loved Rick and Morty. You go outside, you would see people wearing Rick and Morty shirts. You go online, you would see people joking about Pickle Rick and Mr. Meeseeks and whatever. It was everywhere. Everyone knew and loved Rick and Morty. It was a massive part of pop culture in the late 2010s. And then as time went on, interest in the show slowly started to decrease to the point where the show was now seen as a joke. What was once considered the best modern day cartoon was now considered a laughingstock by most people. And there are a lot of reasons as to why the show's reputation did a complete 180. The cringy nature of the show's fan base, the allegations against Sirius co-creator Justin Roiland, and the belief that people started to have that Rick and Morty was never funny to begin with. All of a sudden, Rick and Morty was no longer seen as a cool or funny show. If you said that you liked Rick and Morty, you would be ridiculed just like that, by the same people that praised the show just a couple of years prior. This isn't regular seasonal rot or anything like that. This isn't like with The Simpsons or SpongeBob or Family Guy. No, because those shows are still beloved even if they are nowhere near as good as they used to be. They still generally have good reputations. They still have a place in pop culture nowadays, which I cannot say the same for Rick and Morty. I don't see anyone talk about Rick and Morty anymore. I don't see anyone acknowledge its existence. Whenever a new episode drops, I don't see anyone talk about it online. It's just like poof. It's like the show never existed to begin with. Any critical acclaim that Rick and Morty once had, any pop culture relevance that Rick and Morty once had, it's now completely disappeared, like it never even happened. And on the rare occasions where I see people talk about Rick and Morty nowadays, it's almost always in a negative light. Nobody likes this show anymore. It used to be the biggest show in the entire world, and now it is considered a laughingstock by the internet. While we're on the subject of once beloved cartoons that are now unanimously ridiculed on the internet, you also have The Loud House. The Loud House premiered in early 2016, and almost immediately everyone in the animation community loved it. People were hailing it as a return to form for Nickelodeon, the show that will save Nickelodeon after a slump that they were going through in the early to mid 2010s. This show made people optimistic for the future of Nickelodeon. It made them think that like, oh, things are gonna get better for them. We were gonna start getting more and more good Nicktoons now because of this show. Unfortunately for them though, that would end up not happening at all. Instead of ushering in a new golden age for Nickelodeon, The Loud House would just go and do the complete opposite, instead becoming a new cash cow for Nickelodeon to milk alongside SpongeBob. Any Nicktoon that would come out post Loud House, regardless of its quality, regardless of how good it was, it would end up being largely ignored by Nickelodeon simply because it wasn't raking in the same amount of success that SpongeBob and The Loud House were raking in. I've yet to watch it, but I've heard a lot of things about how Rise of the TMNT is this really great show. It's like this underrated gem of a Nicktoon, and it ended up doing poorly for Nickelodeon. They ended up dismissing it and ignoring it simply because it wasn't SpongeBob or The Loud House. Much like Rick and Morty, The Loud House would also end up having a very problematic creator, which for sure hindered the show's reputation. And the fan base. Dear God, the fan base. Again, much like Rick and Morty, the Loud House's fan base would garner a reputation, an even worse one than Rick and Morty's fan base, if you can believe it. You see, the Loud House is a show about an 11-year-old boy who has to live with 10 sisters. All of these characters are minors. They are all underage. I think you get where this is going. The fan base of this show would put out some of the most disgusting, fucked up stuff you could possibly think of. Stuff that, like, I don't even feel comfortable going into too much detail about because it is genuinely that gross. And that would lead to the Loud House becoming a laughingstock on the internet. Nowadays, I see more hate for the show than love. And again, much like with Rick and Morty, this isn't a seasonal rot situation either. I don't see people say that the Loud House used to be good, but now it's bad. No, I see people say that the Loud House was never good to begin with. All of those videos that cartoon YouTubers would make back in 2016 about how the Loud House would be the show that will save Nickelodeon, they've aged like milk. They are poorly aged. I would actually say that all of those videos aged like milk the moment they dropped, considering the fact that it is near damn impossible to save something that was irredeemable from the start like Nickelodeon. But I digress, okay? It was 2016. It was a completely different time. We didn't know any better. It's crazy looking at both of these shows and the horrible reputations they have nowadays, and just thinking that just a few years ago, these shows were beloved. People loved these shows. People thought they were great shows. And now they have become jokes. They have become laughing stocks all over the internet. Back in the late 2010s, Rick and Morty and the Loud House were two of the most beloved cartoons within the animation community. Nowadays, if you even dare to say that you like Rick and Morty or the Loud House, people will either call you a cringy Redditor or Jeffrey Epstein, or both, assuming God forbid you like both shows. I don't see people say that these shows used to be good, but now they're bad. No, I see people say that they were never good to begin with. Whether you personally agree with this take or not, it doesn't really matter. It has become the popular opinion either way, and there's nothing you can really do about that. This is going to inevitably happen with Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, especially Hazbin Hotel. 4 to 5 years from now, people will look back at Hazbin Hotel and think, how did we find this garbage funny? How did we like this? Why were we praising this show? Hazbin Hotel is already a very divisive show, as mentioned before. People either love it or they hate it. But sooner or later, the hate will grow more and more for the show. This show will be more unanimously disliked. And to a lesser extent, I could see the same thing happening for Helluva Boss. I don't think that Helluva Boss is as bad as Hazbin Hotel, but I could very easily see it going down the same route, where it's like, oh, it's not good anymore, it was never good to begin with. This negative re-evaluation, I could see it happening to Helluva Boss, even if it's not as bad as Hazbin Hotel, simply because of its connection, of its association to Hazbin Hotel. This inevitable belief that people will have that Hazbin Hotel was never good to begin with, a little bit of that is going to leak onto Helluva Boss. It will affect Helluva Boss in some way. Even if it's to a lesser extent, it will still be affected simply because of its association to Hazbin Hotel. I've seen a lot of people say that indie animation is going to become the future. You know, between these two shows and like a bunch of other stuff like the Amazing Digital Circus and whatever, I see people say that like indie animation will become the future. And you know what? That's fine. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against indie animation becoming the norm, because when you look at how things are for the big corporations, when you look at how things are for Nickelodeon, Warner Bros, Disney, you know, like, it's understandable. It makes sense as to why someone would think that indie animation will and should become the norm. I'm not against indie animation becoming the norm. I'm not against supporting indie animation. But I don't think that these two shows should be considered the gold standard for indie animation. animation. I don't think that VivziePop should be the face of indie animation. I know that indie animation is capable of so much, and I don't want its reputation to be ruined by a god-awful cartoon and its significantly better but still mediocre spin-off. I'm disappointed with both of these shows, you know? Like, I see good ideas in them. I think maybe they could work out, but they're just so badly executed. It's the humor. The humor drags both of these shows down. Again, if neither of these shows were comedies, maybe I would respect them a lot more. I genuinely believe that going the extreme route is the better option here. Instead of improving the comedy, they just ditch the comedy completely. Have both of these shows be pure dramas and that's it. Because any of the serious emotional moments that are in these two shows, I'm not able to take them seriously because of how unfunny they are. I get reminded of the style of humor that these shows have, and that completely ruins any credibility that these serious moments have. And even if you think that the serious moments in Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss are poorly executed, even if you think that VivziePop isn't good at doing drama, she is for sure much better at drama than she is at comedy. There's no denying that at all. You could say that her attempts at drama are poor, but like when it comes to her attempts at comedy, it's like, good God, this is the unfunniest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe this needs to be said, but sometimes indie stuff can be bad as well. It's not even just indie animation, you know, indie movies, indie music, indie games, they can be bad as well. Just because Hazbin Hotel is not some big corporate Disney thing, it doesn't automatically mean it's good. Something can be indie, but it can also be bad as well despite that fact. I do think that Helluva Boss is a much better cartoon than Hazbin Hotel, and as it stands, it is one of the better cartoons that I've looked at on the search for the worst cartoon, but it's still nowhere near as good as its reputation suggests. I do think that this show could be a lot better, mainly when it comes to its comedy, because yes, this show doesn't rely on excessive swearing like Hazbin Hotel, but the show is just still generally unfunny. There are interesting ideas in this show, and I want to engage with these interesting ideas more. I want to see what VivziePop is truly capable of, but her foul attempt at comedy, her absolute black hole of humor, prevents me from doing that. I am unable to take either of these shows seriously because of how unfunny they are. Any serious dramatic moments they have, I'm unable to take them seriously. Anytime someone says that these two shows are the future of animation, indie animation, adult animation, just animation in general, I'm not able to take it seriously because I get reminded of the humor that's in these two shows. And I know that they can be a lot better. Again, I'm not hating on these shows because popular thing bad. I'm hating on them because I don't think they're very well executed. They have interesting ideas in them. Helluva Boss especially, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of things that I like about Helluva Boss. I don't think it's a terrible cartoon, but I do think it could be a lot better. I don't think either of these shows should ever be acknowledged whenever people bring up, you know, support indie animation and whatever. Like, no, I will support indie animation that's actually good. Neither of these shows are good. I'm sure there are tons of obscure gems deep within the corners of indie animation. Amazing shows that get no attention at all, and yet these two shows get millions and millions of fans, lots of attention, stuff like that. Sometimes things aren't fair like that, you know? Sometimes they aren't fair. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios.